be a light for you in dark places when all other lights go out.
Hello guys, this is DCHL Devin here, and I'm here to talk about the next race in this How to Play videos, and we're here to talk about Isengard. Isengard is an awesome race, and often considered the Space Marines of Lord of the Rings. And what I mean by that is they have pretty much the perfect stat line. They have excellent fight value, strength, defense, and courage, and able to take on almost any army without even using too many heroes. This is actually the awesome thing about Uruk-hai, and the reason why a lot of beginners seem to gravitate toward them. They're extremely easy to master. You pretty much just pick them up and send them right at the opponent, and oftentimes they're going to beat whoever it is they're going against. Even against the likes of elves, their stat line tends to trump elves. Despite the fact that elves do have a higher fight value, the defense and strength of the Uruk-hai seems to always win out. This is one of the best things about this race. This faction is really, really good. It honestly is very competitive in my opinion. Despite having what could be a lack of options, the regular troops have the best of all options that you would expect. Instead of spears, they have pikes. Instead of bows, they have crossbows. They honestly, even their siege weapons, everything, a lot of their options are better than most of the other options that you would expect from other races. Now, not only is Isengard extremely good in close combat, but also they have extremely good shooting options as well. A lot of people don't think of Isengard when they talk about shooting, except for when we're talking about crossbows, and this is probably the best shooting weapon they have. This is easily one of the most feared weapons in the game, able to take down anything that is below defense 7 with relative ease, actually. But even there's a lot more to say about this army than just the crossbows themselves. Actually, the Ruffians, which is a kind of an underlooked option, are actually better than Orc Trackers. Ruffian with a bow costs the same amount as an Orc Tracker, and they can be spammed heavily. But rather than having a Orc bow, which is range of 18 inches, they instead have regular bows. So this also makes them really good. And then the options really don't stop there. You have quite a bit more for the Uruk-hai as well, with the Scouts carrying bows, though most people won't field this option quite as often. But even still, I have to say that the Isengard army is extremely good at range. In fact, one option I'd often try is to try to spam the Isengard crossbows using orcs, either orcs or ruffians. If you spam them up, you will absolutely crush any opposition. Now, while we're on the topic of archery, we also have to mention siege weapons. Isengard is known for their siege capability, and they have fantastic siege weapons. One that can actually be used in close combat, which is the demolition bombs you see here, and another which is the Siege Assault Ballista. The Ballista does not have to be used in sieges. In fact, it can bring the enemy toward you pretty effectively with its piercing shot and incredibly long range. Then you can use the crossbows to form a gun line that would honestly murder almost any opponent. The best thing about the archers for the Isengard faction is the fact that the crossbowmen are also extremely good in close combat. They have a Uruk-hai stat line at the end of the day, so feeling free to send them right into the fray is not a problem at all. Even beyond the basic troops of the Uruk-hai, we actually can also see elite options that do extremely well in the game. They have Berserkers, they have the Feral Uruk-hai, and they actually have a lot of other options. Actually, some I would hesitate to call elites, which you could say like the Dune-lending warriors and such. They function actually kind of alongside the warrior role. Oftentimes in the Uruk-hai army, you're going to see more often that people are playing the generic troops. Even with the generic troops, we can also consider with the Uruk-hai Scouts. Uruk-hai Scouts are extremely fast. In fact, some of the fastest infantry in the game when upgraded with Maher, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Joel can help me out on that in the comments below. And these guys honestly are extremely quick. I'd highly recommend them. This race has just a very, very good selection of infantry options. So when we keep talking about infantry, you have to wonder, okay, so what do they have in terms of cavalry? Unfortunately, in terms of cavalry, this is actually where the Uruk-hai actually tend to lack. The cavalry for the Uruk-hai is just pretty much warg riders, and that's about it. Unfortunately, the Uruk-hai won't be able to move fast unless you're using scouts. They just really do not have good cav options. When you compare these warg riders to the general infantry, most people are going to often pick the regular infantry. It just really isn't worth it. Unfortunately, the warg riders only function more of like sort of a scouting role or almost a flanking force. They're never going to really give you the hard-hitting power that you'd expect from an Isengard faction. So oftentimes you're going to see most Isengard lists running pure infantry blocks, which is actually just fine considering that they generally can bring the opponent to them with superior range. So all this talk about the troops for Isengard has ultimately been the selling point for this army, but what about the heroes of Isengard? Unfortunately, this is where I personally regard Isengard falls short as well. So not only do they have a lack of cav options, but they also have a lack of hero options as well. Unfortunately, Isengard doesn't do too well on most heroics. In fact, a lot of people complain about how lame and pathetic some of the heroes of Isengard are. It's not that they're bad, just not as good as you'd expect. With the troops being such high quality, you'd expect the heroes to also generate the same reward. Nonetheless, the heroes of Isengard are still good. I'd absolutely recommend fielding them, despite the fact that they don't do all the special tricks, such as Boromir or Aragorn. When you talk about heroes, we have to mention Saruman. Saruman is actually probably the staple of the Isengard army. Though not necessary to play the army, he is pretty awesome and memorable from the movies. I'd absolutely recommend playing this guy. He's not as good, unfortunately, as the good Saruman, though he does have a couple bad tricks up his sleeve, which is one being Wormtongue. Wormtongue is an awesome addition to an Isengard army and can really cause a lot of problems. Another thing that, another hero worth mentioning in Isengard is actually Vrasku. Not pictured here, actually, but he's actually usually fielded with crossbows. Here, I can actually give you a better look at him. Vrasku is an absolute beast on the field. He is an expert shot with a crossbow, which is actually quite insane when you think about it. He's easily worth his weight in points. I think that he is a must-buy amongst the packs. Plus, he's only $20, and he comes with another captain alongside him. Other than him, when we talk about heroes, we also have to mention like the Shaman, which is very, very much a staple in the Uruk-hai race. What more to make the unstoppable Uruk-hai more unstoppable than to add in a Shaman that pretty much stops him from dying? This is an extremely awesome effect. I mean, most Uruk-hai armies are not going to be seen without this guy. Other than that, their heroes are pretty mediocre, and you could actually just kind of swap them out with generic captains. You're not going to see too much heroics, I suppose you can say, legendary things that you expect from a cinematic movie. So this is definitely a weakness of the Uruk-hai. Now, as for the tactics for Isengard, there's really not too many. Unfortunately, one of the complaints of Isengard is the lack of troop options. Personally, I don't see this as a lack. It just really only has a couple ways you can really play the army. They do have quite a few troop options, but compared to their basic standard troops, a lot of them fall flat. Why play the orcs when you can play the mighty Uruk-hai? Why play ruffians when, once again, you played Isengard to play the hard-hitting power of Uruks? So the first and main way we see the Isengard faction being played is with infantry phalanxes, basically. It's often regarded that a shield wall is 2 ranks deep, and the Uruk-hai have pikes, which allows them to be 3 walls deep. You may notice these pikes in the back actually can fight 2 ranks deep into the swordman, so contributing 2 extra attacks. A lot of people will often throw a banner behind them and then have a shaman leading a lot of the party. Now you may notice in the front here I have a bunch of heroes. This is actually probably the most effective way to play Isengard pike blocks if you want to cut through quickly. One thing noted about Isengard captains is that they're very strong for the amount of points that they are. With a fight value of 5, strength of 5, and 2 attacks, plus plenary of might, actually this is actually where Lurtz and some of the name characters come, since they have 3 might. These guys can cut through armies extremely quickly. Considering that Lurtz and them will get basically a total of 4 dice plus a reroll, this is extremely awesome killing power. You're going to end up winning, and with a strength of 5, you're going to end up wounding. You call heroic fights and just slaughter through the front ranks. This is a very, very difficult tactic to beat. Another way to play this army is to play Berserkers in the front. Berserkers add 2 attacks as well, and they're just a basic troop choice that you can field quite a lot of. Now, unfortunately, with the Uruk-hai, you're not going to get many troops. With your average warrior costing you about 10 or more points, you're really going to struggle to find a large army of these guys. They can be easily outnumbered quite quickly. However, as long as you keep the pipe block aimed right where you need them, right in the center of your opponent's force, then you're not going to have a problem with this at all. So I'd often recommend that you just pretty much go ahead and play the pike block. It's very, very common, very hard to beat, hard to kill. Now, keep in mind, yes, your front rank will be trapped. This is the reason I actually recommend heroes, since they have the fate and everything to stop it. But also you have the shaman in the back to provide a fury save. This is probably the most common and most effective way to play Isengard. Another popular tactic with the Isengard faction is the gun line. This is pretty much getting as many crossbows as you can and absolutely annihilating your opponent before the combat ever hits. Now, this was more popular back in the old days when you would deploy 12 inches from the back, the board edge. However, nowadays you actually are more commonly deployed right in the front lines. However, it's still possible to deploy in such a manner that you could get off 2 shots and volleys before the opponent meets your battle line. The best part about this thing is it will pretty much outshoot every other army, including elven bow lines. So you really have archer superiority when it comes to this type of list. What a lot of people will do, because the crossbows are so hard to get in a mass, is to use orcs. You often will spam orcs with spears and use them as actually a supporting rank behind the crossbows. That way, when the battle lines hit, you still have the superior strength of the Uruk-hai with the orcs in the back, and then using banners and such to hold your lines. By the time they meet you, you should have killed off enough of them where either it's evened out if they're playing a hoarding list, or you're in superior numbers and superior strength by the time they meet if they happen to be playing a list that is just as small as yours. So this is actually a very popular tactic. In fact, there was a person by the name of Mick. I believe he went by the username Black Mist. Black Mist was a person who actually used the gun line, but this was back in the day before warbands were created. Warbands have made this tactic quite a bit harder to use. However, your Isengard captains can be armed with crossbows to help also keep this up and keep up the volley and the numbers that you're needing. It's very possible to still do this tactic today. Now, the last list we often see in Isengard is the Maher's Marauders list, which is essentially just a bunch of really fast-moving infantry. The wargs are supposed to be the fast-moving infantry for the game. They move 8 inches, and that's kind of their purpose, I guess. They're really kind of bad because of the fact that they're large base sizes. A lot of people say they would use, a lot of people believe probably that if wargs were a infantry-sized base, 25 mil, then they would probably use them. Well, that's what essentially these guys are. When they get their cost upgrade from Maher, they can move 8 inches, and a lot of people just run these all over the place, flank and stuff like that. This is probably the least often used Isengard tactic compared to the other two. I think that a lot of the other ones are a little bit more powerful, but if you just combine this one into the other ones, a lot of people do find a lot of uses for just swarming these guys everywhere, because the thing about them is they're very fast moving, but they're still Uruk-hai, so you're really still throwing around a lot of fight for, a lot of strength for, a lot of that really, really strong ability from the Uruk-hai that you expect. So this is definitely another tactic that's really worth using. Alright guys, so now this is the how to buy portion of this video, where I try to get you to buy the army for under $100, or at least help you get it for under $100. As people know, Games Workshop is a little expensive, and so a lot of people want to jump right into the hobby with just as little money as necessary. Often I preach $100 is exactly what you'll need just to start off the entire faction. Now, unfortunately, I had to actually refilm this part because when I started to post this video, I realized that Games Workshop actually raised their prices. They actually just did that. So if you're watching this video, go ahead and look online and realize that, unfortunately, the pillaging of our pockets continues. A lot of the things that originally were $15 are now $18, and the ones that were $50 are now $60. Or 40 are now 50, so it's actually kind of difficult. I had to rewrite it a little bit based on the new pricing. Unfortunately, when it comes to the Isengard faction, you really can only save money if you're just already sure what type of army you want to play. Isengard uses Uruks, as is obvious throughout this entire video, but the problem with that is there's not many stand-ins for other armies. So, like, where I could kind of fill in here and there with other armies for different factions, like I could pull a unit from, you know, I don't know, the Rohan army and make it something else. It's a little difficult here because all of your creatures are unlike any other creatures in Middle-earth. So, obviously the only thing that comes to mind is the Mordor Urukai, where you get, for $18 now, it's 3 Urukai, and you can usually proxy these as captains. This is actually probably not a bad idea. I actually would do it. They don't look too much different. However, if you want the classic armored up look, my recommendation is actually the command pack that only gives a banner and a commander. The reason I say this is because that one's $18, whereas the other one is $50. So if you want the shaman and the drum, you're going to have to pay a lot more money. In fact, 2 of these smaller command packs still aren't as much as the Isengard Commander's box. So I'd actually expect that that smaller one's going to probably go out of stock very soon. So you might want to get that actually while it's still there. Other than that, you're pretty much forced to just buy whatever it is you were trying to get. 2 Isengard Urukai Warrior boxes will give you pretty much all the pikes you're going to need. However, you're really not going to be able to buy much else. If you want the Isengard Urukai Scouts, then you can go with that list to do the Maher's Marauders list and go for a bunch of, you know, fast-moving scouts. Now, the crossbows, berserkers, and many of the elite units are pretty much impossible to find anywhere else within Games Workshop, so you pretty much only have this option. You're going to have to actually buy the $30 pack, which is now actually $31 for the Isengard crossbows and the Urukai berserkers. So there's no really any real way around that. I would say that if you're going to get the Urukai Berserkers, you probably want to go ahead and get the Siege Troops. The Urukai Siege Troops comes with demolition bombs and comes with 8 sappers and 2 Berserkers. Now, they're all in one pose, so you probably may not like the poses, but if you're about saving money and you really, really want Berserkers, then my recommendation is get the sappers and arm them up maybe with a second weapon and call them ferals. This is a great way to get like a lot more troops in your army, or you could just simply use them as frontline Urukai to save money later. They are exactly the same price, only $1 more, and you get a lot more money for your buck. So clearly these Berserkers are obviously priced based on their skill in battle rather than how much it costs to produce them. Now, unfortunately for Urukai crossbowmen, there really isn't too many other options. You're going to have to just buy the ones they have. The other crossbow-armed model in the GW line actually went out of production quite a while ago. It's a Corsair Arbalest. So the only other way you're really going to get a lot of crossbows is if you buy the Empire crossbowmen from the Fantasy series of Games Workshop's line. Now, obviously, you wouldn't use the men that they put on there. They would look quite ridiculous. But you could probably use the crossbows and attach them to your to the sapper teams. It might look a little weird. I'm not sure how really this would work out, but it'd be the only conversion you could do. The Empire crossbowmen come with 10 crossbows in a pack. You just can take all their crossbows off and then hand it on to some of the sapper arms and stuff like that. They're probably not going to be posed in any type of firing position, but like I said, if you're on a budget, then you probably have to do what you can do. That would cost you $30 right there for the crossbowmen, $30 for the sapper team, and well, I guess that's $60. And then your last 2 would probably have to be, well, unfortunately, you'd probably have to get a regular Urukai box of warriors just to actually have all that. It'd be a little tough. It probably wouldn't work out in that way. But definitely, otherwise, yeah, just put a lot of planning into this. Fortunately for you, if you are doing an Urukai race, army, then you're probably not going to have to spend much money beyond the initial investment anyway. The army is extremely expensive unless you go the whole ruffian or dune lending route, which nobody does because the dune lendings and ruffians are just completely inferior to the Urukai themselves. Not to say they're worthless, they're absolutely playable in the sense that you could spam up, but also they're impossible to buy anyway because of the fact that they're out of production as well. Only the regular dune lending warriors being in production still. So Well, that's all I've got for you today for the Isengard army. That's our how to play video on this faction. If there's anything I left out that you guys thought that I really should be putting into the future videos, please let me know, and I can definitely answer all questions that you guys might have. As always, thanks for watching.